So welcome to the Dr. Paul Show. I have the pleasure of introducing a guest today, Jennifer Disney, and I met well Jennifer. I heard about her through someone we both know, Tammy Corwin, and I think she's all Tammy's. She worked with you in your book before.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get into that later too. But anyways, Jennifer has a story. Quite a story, actually. We are doing this, we're focusing this series, this season on PTSD. And anyway, so if you could go ahead, Jennifer, you could start and tell us the whole story from the beginning. That'd be great.
Wow. That's it is quite the story. So when I was younger, I had a lot of trauma. I just plain and simple. Starting from the time that I could remember really. I grew up in a household where addiction was prevalent and it kind of dominated my entire upbringing. Um, and by the time I was about 6 years old, things started to really spiral downhill. And my dad had been injured at work. And around that time, as he started sexually abusing me. And I just remember, like as a child, you really don't understand what's going on.
Mhm.
You don't have a lot of I don't know how to explain it. It's for me, it just didn't resonate somehow. It was weird. It didn't make sense to me.
Well, at that age too, your
Yeah.
brain doesn't even go there. I mean, it's so
No,
out
no, it was
of
so beyond my
yeah.
comprehension of what was going on. But the one thing I did understand was when my dad told me, I couldn't tell anybody about it. And if I did, he it basically asked me, "You don't want your daddy to go to jail, do you?" And of course, I didn't want my dad to go to jail because I mean, no child wants to see their parent go to jail. And so it was something at that point that it immediately I knew it was wrong because he said that, not because of what he was doing. And that I think that was the red flag for me as a child was okay, this is not okay if he's concerned about going to jail for it. So I think in large part during that time in my life, it went on for years, and during that time in my life, I largely detached, dissociated. When I remember those things, when I see them in my memory, I see it from a third person perspective. I don't see it as it happening to me. I see it as it happening to somebody else. Um, the abuse was pervasive in our home. As far as the sexual abuse went, I don't know for sure whether or not my siblings experienced any sexual abuse from my dad. I know that there was a lot of physical abuse and emotional, psychological abuse, and it was both of my parents who were abusive. But as far as I was concerned, that's what I received from it. So um, I did get, in a way, I could say that I kind of got special treatment in that my dad was not as harsh with me. I didn't get disciplined as harshly as the other kids did, or my sister for that matter, which begs a lot of questions, but she herself doesn't have a lot of recollection as to a lot of the things she experienced. Um, I saw a lot of abuse. My older brother George endured a great deal of abuse. The depth of that abuse, I can only speak from what I witnessed. Um, as far as what he remembers experiencing and the things that I did not witness, I can't really speak to that. But my dad he was kind of what I might call his damn it doll. He was the one that was always he was slower, he was not as smart, he was not as athletic, everything was wrong with him. And so it was, I think, because George was kind of my best friend. We were, in a way, we were kind of like twins because when he was in kindergarten, or I'm sorry, when I was in kindergarten and he moved to first grade, they decided to hold him back. So from the time that I was in kindergarten all through school, him and I were kind of together all the time. And so people would often think that we were twins and everything. And we kind of just went with it. You know, it was okay. It wasn't a big deal. And we were so close anyways that it didn't have a large effect on us. So moving forward, I can go into detail about all the ins and outs, all the things that happen and stuff, but we would be talking for hours if I did that.
Hmm.
As I got older, I used to try to find respite from the home. I wanted to get away, like any other kid that might be experiencing such severe abuse. I wanted to just get away from it. And one of those outlets that I found was with my aunt and my grandparents, and that often was church. So my aunt had invited us to church camp, and I remember very, very, very clearly when I first got to go, and I saw the. I'm sorry, this fly is like driving me crazy. It's flying all around me.
How old were you then at that
So
point?
I would have been about 8 or 9 at that time. Um, so I remember the memory that really sticks to me the most was when I was standing there watching, it was a Baptist church camp. I was standing there watching these other kids go forward and because it was the altar call. It was, come and be saved, and so as a kid, I was like, saved from what? Like saved from home, saved from. But
Yeah,
the idea was appealing, no matter what it looked like. I wanted to be saved,
right.
but I didn't know what it meant. I didn't understand it. But what I saw was a bunch of kids going forward and all this affirmation and validation and love and hugs and affection and things that I was not accustomed to receiving. I didn't know what that was like. And so when I saw it, I was like, wow, that's pretty fantastic. I want a piece of that. And so I did. I went forward and did all the motions. And of course, the celebration, and everybody knew where I was coming from. Everybody knew that. I mean, at that point, people weren't aware of the sexual abuse, but they were aware of the extensive abuse that we were enduring as children, and then being in poverty and everything on top of all of that. So, yeah, it just the whole feeling of just feeling that love, or I call it love, but in retrospect, it wasn't really what love was. It was affirmation and validation that I was searching for to find my worth. And the idea of being saved was so appealing to me as a child. I wanted to be out of my home. I wanted to be somewhere, anywhere but there.
Hmm.
It didn't work out that way. So we'll just put it out there. It didn't happen the way I expected it to. But I did spend more time going every Sunday. My aunt would come pick me up, or every other Sunday. It happened for a while that was going on,
Hmm.
but it was largely my home life was still very much a secret. That kept it to myself. So moving forward, when I was 9 years old, and my parents had gotten into a fight, and my dad got arrested, and my mom she took us to a safe house. And in that safe house, I thought this was it. Like, my mom was talking about divorce, she was leaving my dad, and now I was safe. I was finally safe, and so I took that as an opportunity to tell her what he was doing to me. And I remember sitting at the table, and I thought about it for a long time. I mean, you think about a 9-year-old child. I'm still in awe of my ability to do this as a child. But
Yeah, I
I
am.
sat there thinking about it, like, gosh, how do I do this? And finally, I just came out with it and told my mom, and she just shocked and oh my gosh, she takes me outside and she wants to give me the full story of what's going on and everything. And then I find myself in a sheriff's department, and what we know now as an interrogation room. There's a two-way mirror, and there was a microphone hanging from the ceiling and a recording device in the middle of the table. I was by myself. Nobody was there with me, and I was being interviewed by probably about a 30-year-old man by myself in this room, which today I can't imagine that being the case, them doing something like that to a
Right.
child. It was just insane to me now when I look at it, what they were even thinking to do something like that.
That
But
that had a woman police officer in there.
No, yeah, it was just me and this man, and I'm just telling this man, and I was afraid to tell him things. I remember how scared I was. Like I didn't want to say the wrong words. Like I especially didn't want to say bad words. That was something that was really weighing on me. Like do I like what kind of words do I say? And so I tried to talk about what happened without causing a situation where I might get in trouble. So I remember walking out of there and I remember my mom getting so angry at me because instead of telling him that I made him touch his privates, I said I made him touch his balls and she was like, "That's not what it's called." And she was so angry about it. And so even I did that wrong. Like I couldn't even talk about what was happening to me without it being wrong. It was extremely traumatic. I mean, just call it what it is. It was super traumatic for me. Um, when we got home from that situation, it just spiraled. Everything just seemed to spiral. And I remember my dad had been arrested, so he was gone.
So
And
now
we
was he arrested because of your mom's complaint or because of your complaint?
I'm not sure. I know he found out. I don't know if he found out in jail or if he had been arrested from that because I know we were taken to the safe house. So that's a little fuzzy to me. I don't remember kind of the series of events that led
Yeah.
to him being arrested or if he had new charges as a result of it. Um, but he had gotten out of jail and I didn't know anything about what was going on, but my dad walks in the house out of nowhere and my mom is sleeping and I went up to my dad and again another thing where it's like I'm just this courageous 9-year-old child that is just I'm just gonna do this thing and I'm just gonna be honest and I told my dad what I did, what I that I told my mom and he started crying, he started sobbing uncontrollably. He apologized to me. He hugged my siblings, and my mom can't, comes out and she's got a gun. She's like I telling him, yelling at him to get out of the house, and that she was like you raped my daughter and you did and like just so angry. And in my mind, as a 9-year-old child, I'm like, oh my God, my mom is going to kill my dad, and it's my fault. Like it's every child's worst nightmare, especially when you're already in such a traumatic
Right.
situation. So. Um, Again, trying to reflect on it and everything, I'm so proud of that child. Like, it's amazing what she was able to do. Um, but I continued forward. My dad ended up leaving that day, and that at some time within the next few hours, he had tried to commit suicide. And so he
He
ended
did.
up in an institution and things just continued to go downhill. I mean, things just got worse and worse and worse. Um, Moving forward, my the sexual abuse had essentially stopped until I was about 10 years old. And then there was another incident, but at that when that incident happened, it's amazing. Again, I'm just thinking of this child is just so incredible.
Hmm.
When he had attempted to abuse me, I told him that if he didn't stop, I was going to scream. And he stopped. And that was the last time anything ever happened. So I was about 10, I think I was about 10 at that time.
Hmm.
Um, Going forward more, when
Which
I was in my,
when you were 10, that was with your father, or who was that? That was
it
with.
was my father still. My parents are still married to this day. Um, so moving forward, um, teenager, a lot of stuff had happened in between. Again, there's just so much. It would be impossible for me to get into everything
Right.
specifically, but when I became a teenager, about 15 years old, I had heard one of my peers talking about church. And he just seemed really happy. And I kind of had a crush on him, admittedly. And I was like, okay, this is a good looking guy. He goes to church, that's awesome. I'm a teenage girl and I didn't have boyfriends as a teenager, so anyway, but either
Right.
that's neither here nor there. But I was fascinated. And so I started going to this church. I got involved in it, grew close to the pastor and his wife, and I remained heavily involved in the church. I got saved again. I've got saved so many times in my life. It's of course that's all going to be in my story, but I've gone to church so many times. Just it's I think it was more of that trying to find structure and stability in my life more than anything.
Mhm.
Um, but got saved again, and then I became heavily involved in the church. I started in a puppet show ministry that they had. I had started in um, the praise and worship team, so I was singing on in the church and just very involved. I was going Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday nights. Any time that they had something going on, I was involved with it.
And you were how old here then about?
So that was from the time of I was between 15 and 17 years old. I mean, I still stayed involved even after that, but before I
Okay.
get to the next thing, that was a huge part of my life. I remember the first time I'd gone to church and I came home and I walked downstairs and my dad was sitting there on the couch and he just looked at me just a cold stare and tells me, "Don't think you're better than us just because you went to church one time." So for me, that was a challenge. I was like, really? All right, let's bring it. All right, so that's it. Well, I'll keep going. It was that kind of that rebellious side of me, and it really worked out in my favor in a lot of ways, but then not either, as you'll soon learn. But so I really stuck to it. I was very heavily into it. I had people giving me rides and stuff because I didn't have that support from home, but I did have people who were willing to support me in that transition in my life or transformation, whatever you want to call it. So, when I was 17, I was 16 actually, I dropped out of high school. Um, and I decided it was just before I turned 17, so it's shortly before that. So about a month and a half or 2 months after I dropped out of high school, I received my GED, and
Mhm.
I started that next semester in college, in the local college. I was still at home. Um, and things were okay. Things were going okay. It wasn't too terrible. My parents were always just who they were. And so it's just kind of one of those things I just grew to become accustomed to. I was raising my little brothers. I was juggling a lot of different things at the same time. I was working, going to school, 17 years old. It was a big job. I had taken on a big task.
Mhm.
And then going to church, that was a priority for me at that time. Um, and the
Was,
summer came
was
around.
was this a mainstream like Christian church or what?
It was a local Pentecostal church.
Yeah, all right.
So it wasn't a huge church. They did all the speaking in tongues and all that stuff that people look at and they're like, "Oh, that's weird for me." So it was weird for me too. I'm not gonna lie. It was a little it put me off too, but it wasn't enough for me to say I'm not gonna have this.
Right.
Um, so about several months before I turned 18, I got into an argument with my parents. So I had left my parents' home after I got into an argument. So my little brothers were, I guess I could go back a little bit. I have five siblings. I have four brothers and one sister. Two are older than me,
Oh.
and my two brothers are younger, and my sister is younger. Um, my littlest brother at that time, I believe he was a toddler. He might have been four. He was pretty young. Um, he was walking in front of the television. My dad was sitting in his chair. He was walking in front of the television, and my dad just exploded. It was completely unreasonable and out of touch. And he grabbed him by the arm and picked him up and started spanking him like hard. And it was just so unexplainable to me. Like, what are you doing? And at this time, I really started to gain a voice a little bit. I started becoming a little bit more confident in myself. So I did. I told him if I ever saw him do something like that again to my little brother, I would call the police on him because it was it was so excessive. Like
Good
it's
for you.
unbelievable. Um, and he got mad at me and he basically said, if you don't like the way I run this house, then just leave. And I told him, all right, I will leave and I am never coming back. And he tells me, yes, you will. You'll come back just like your brothers did. And I was like, no, I won't. It's not going to happen. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what I was going to do. I don't even, as a 17-year-old, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was going to go out on my own. Um, and so I did, I called a friend and I ended up staying there with her for just like a night or two. It wasn't very long. And then my pastor's wife said, "Hey, we've got a women's retreat that we're going to. Do you want to go to this?" And kind of give you some time to figure out what you're going to do. And I was like, yeah, of course, that sounds fantastic. So me and my sister actually both went to that retreat, and it was a lovely time. And the women were really sweet and really kind. So many people had offered help and everything, but it was my pastor's wife who came out and said, "Hey, we're going to start doing foster care. Would you like to stay with us? And you can help us with it and everything." And that they weren't concerned that I was only 17. There was no concern about any of that. But I was like, sure, like that sounds great. So I ended up going and staying with them, got a job, got a good job. They helped me get a car and everything. And everything seemed pretty good at that point.
Right.
Um, 9/11 happens and I decided to join the military.
Mm,
And so, and just for context, by this point, I mean, I had gone to, I want to say 10 schools growing up, around 10 different schools growing up, off the top of my head, or moved that many times between schools. Um, and so I was already kind of not stable. My programming had already set me up for failure, so to speak.
mm,
And that's very prevalent as you'll be able to see later in my life. But so I joined the military, went through basic training. Everything was great, worked out fantastic. I did really well, had no issues at all, and until I started school. And when I started school, I started dealing with a lot of inappropriate behaviors from men. Um, it was found out that I was a virgin, and like everybody was it was like a big deal there. And I had one of my friends, guy friends, tell me, "Hey, you need to be careful because some of the guys have put a bet out on you, and you're probably not safe." And so that was like,
wow.
oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, I can't do anything alone now. I'm here by myself. I have no connections, and the icing on the cake was I went to a bar or a club on the base, and I was there with one of my girlfriends, and she and her boyfriend were going to go leave somewhere. Well, there was a petty officer I was in the Navy, so there was a petty officer who uh, was much higher than me, and he was actually he was in charge of the barracks that I stayed in, and he saw me and he had asked me, "Hey, you should come home with me." And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not happening. I'm going with my friends. And so he started making fun of me and antagonizing me. Oh, you're just going to be a third wheel, and just giving me a hard time about it. And so that really solidified my sense of feeling unsafe in that environment, because even the person that was supposed to watch over our barracks as females and keep us safe and protected was now a person I needed to be concerned about. And so he had all this control over my safety and security in the place that I slept. So at that point, I was just constantly in this state of anxiety. I wouldn't leave my room. I wouldn't go anywhere. And finally, one of my friends was, you need to see a psychiatrist. You need to go and talk to somebody because this is not okay." So I did, and it was at that time that they decided they had diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress disorder and decided that the military was not a suitable place for me to be. And so I was discharged from the military after 7 months, about 6 months, I believe. So I left there and went back to live with my pastor and his family, and things. I mean, there's just a lot of instability. I was there. I moved to a friend's house. I lived with my grandfather. So in a very short period of time, I bounced around quite a bit, and the timeline behind all of it is a little bit fuzzy to me.
Hmm.
But while I was going to church one day, I had come across a woman who we knew she was a foreign woman. She spoke Spanish and English and had a really strong accent, and she said she was from Costa Rica and that she was starting she was building cabins for a Christian retreat on her land in Costa Rica. And she came up to me, approached me, and asked me, "Hey, I'm doing this thing in Costa Rica. Would you like to go as a missionary to help build the cabins and you could do other things as well, or whatever you want to do?" And I was like, "Wow, this is fantastic. Of course I want to do this. This is great." My pastor and his wife were like, "Nah, you probably shouldn't go. It's probably not a good idea." And I know they loved me very much. There's no doubt in my mind that they really loved me. But I didn't know love at that time. I didn't understand it. I didn't know what that looked like. For me, everything looked like control. If it wasn't what I wanted, it was control. So
Why did they
um,
why did they not want you to go?
they didn't trust her. Especially my pastor, he actually didn't feel right about the situation, and he didn't really go into any great detail about it. But he really didn't feel right about it. He didn't think it was the best move for me. But I was me. I was stubborn. I was going to do what I was going to do. I always wanted to be a missionary, and a door opened. So without question, I was going to walk through that door. And so I did. And that ended up spiraling very quickly for me when I got to Costa Rica. It started out okay. We got there and I got to meet her whole family and everything. And I started noticing some things were off. Like some things just weren't right away, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
Mm,
She finally takes me to the land where we're going to be building these cabins and everything, and we're in the middle of the jungle. I mean, this is like there is nothing for miles. Now, if you look at it, now there's some development around the area, but at that time, there
right.
was nothing but jungle all the way around. Um, and but it was okay. I still felt like I was in a safe place and things were okay. Um, and it was about a few months later when I started noticing that things were not right. Something was off. And one of the big things I noticed is that I was not given her true identity. She was not the person she said she was.
Mm,
She had basically stolen an identity in the United States and was living in the United States under that identity. And then when she'd go to Costa Rica, of course, all these people knew her under this other identity,
mm,
but I was unaware of this person. They were completely different names. There was no connection to the names at all. And so I asked her very, very blatantly, why are they calling you this? Like, I don't understand. And so her reasoning to me was that when she came to the United States, some wonderful family adopted her as a 30-some-year-old woman and gave her their name in California. So I was like, okay, like and I was young and naive and I didn't understand the laws. I had no idea what she was talking about.
right.
Um, but I kind of just went with it and just accepted it as the reality. I accepted her reality that she was feeding me. And so about 4 months in when I was supposed to leave, I was only supposed to be there for 4 months. Uh, my visa was only 4 months long. And I was kind of getting excited to leave because by that point, I didn't get paid for any of the work I did. I was working from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night from Monday through Saturday. And it was labor. It wasn't like I wasn't cooking and cleaning and or anything like that. I was peeling bark off of trees. I was helping cut down trees. I was helping haul things. It was just
Wow.
hard labor. It was not easy. Um, and a lot of hiking up these mountains were so steep and it was dangerous even. But when that 4 month mark came along, I was ready to go home. I was like, I'm done. I'm so glad I'm going home. So I told her, I'm excited to go home. What do we need to do? I started talking about it, and she lost it. She completely lost it and started yelling at me and telling me, "This is what you always do. You always give up on everything, and now you're just giving up on this, and now you're trying to run away, and this is your calling. This is what God wants for it." Just all
Wow.
kinds of things. She was cruel. She was mean. I walked away from the situation and went for a hike. And I got to a place where it was like I had to accept the situation I was in. I had no escape. I had nowhere to go.
Wow.
Yeah, and she told me in that moment that if you want to leave, you're going to have to find your own way.